In the silent pre-dawn hours of a port facility in northern Norway, a temperature-controlled truck the size of a small house reverses into one of the most advanced cold storage loading bays in Europe. Its cargo, more than 20 metric tons of ultra-frozen seafood, with a core temperature locked at an astonishing -70 degrees Celsius. At this temperature, the fish and shellfish aren't just preserved, they are in suspended animation, their cellular integrity perfectly maintained. But what begins here is just one segment of a colossal operation that moves over 100 tons of frozen seafood across the entire European continent every week, without the temperature ever fluctuating more than a degree. In a world where timing, airflow, and seconds matter, this is less a transport route and more a meticulously choreographed cold chain ballet. The seafood itself comes from the icy waters of the Barents Sea, Greenland, Iceland, and the far North Atlantic. Caught and flash frozen within minutes aboard specialized vessels, the product is already at -60 degrees Celsius by the time it reaches the docks. From there, it enters vacuum-sealed, nitrogen-infused holding chambers where temperatures are driven even lower, stabilizing at the critical -70 degrees Celsius threshold. Why this number? Because at -70, microbial life ceases, enzyme activity halts, and the natural texture and flavor of the seafood is preserved for months as if it were just pulled from the ocean that morning. That level of preservation, however, comes with an extreme set of logistical challenges. Maintaining that internal temperature through customs, across borders, over highways and rails, and into regional distribution centers is a task so demanding that only a handful of logistics companies in the world have ever pulled it off. Each shipment begins its journey in a hyper-cooled staging center lined with walls of aluminum panels and cooled by industrial cryo-engines that operate continuously without shutdown. These are not your typical refrigerated units. They use a hybrid of cryogenic nitrogen injection and phase-change material technology to maintain a climate so hostile that gloves become brittle and break in seconds. Forklifts run on sealed hydraulic systems designed to withstand liquid temperatures colder than the surface of Mars. Workers inside wear triple-insulated suits, often for shifts no longer than 15 minutes at a time. Every movement, from loading to sealing, is timed and logged, with door openings limited to under 7 seconds to avoid thermal contamination. The moment a crate is sealed inside the truck, the countdown begins. The cargo has 72 hours to reach its final destination, Milan, Paris, Warsaw, or Barcelona, before the insulation begins to lose efficiency. Every second counts. Inside the truck, the cargo is surrounded by vacuum-insulated panels and double-walled cryotanks that constantly recirculate liquid nitrogen vapors to sustain the temperature. The sensors embedded in the walls of each crate communicate in real time with a control tower over 1,000 kilometers away, sending updates every 60 seconds. If the temperature rises even by 0.5 degrees Celsius, a protocol is triggered, a nitrogen burst floods the chamber and emergency alerts are sent to the operations hub and backup trucks stationed along the route. This is not overkill. At these sub-zero levels, even the slightest breach can cause internal crystallization and irreversible damage to the delicate muscle fibers of high-grade seafood like bluefin tuna, sea urchin roe, or Chilean sea bass. The first leg of the journey involves moving the shipment from the Arctic warehouse to a consolidation hub in Hamburg. But these trucks don't move like ordinary vehicles. They are escorted by redundant GPS systems, satellite-linked thermographic monitors, and route-clearing coordination with local authorities to avoid traffic delays that could cost critical minutes. They refuel at custom-built cryostations with hoses that feed directly into insulated tanks. No warm air can be allowed inside. Even the tires are made of synthetic rubber compounds tested at -80 degrees Celsius to prevent cracking on frozen tarmac. Once in Hamburg, shipments are separated into regional lines, one to southern France, another toward the Benelux countries, and another into Eastern Europe. Each segment is handled by a relay system of cryo-trailers waiting in pre-cooled hangars. The trucks never idle. As soon as one pulls in, an automated lift system transfers the crates into the next trailer in under 3 minutes, again, without a single breach in thermal integrity. The human presence here is minimal. Robotics arms do most of the work, navigating by LiDAR and IR sensors to maintain cold chamber purity. The goal is to move fish faster than they could ever begin to thaw, with a margin of error so small that even condensation on the outside of the crate is considered a potential failure. This infrastructure supports not just high-end restaurants but also biotech labs, surgical facilities, and even pharmaceutical companies who rely on similar transport protocols. Yet, at the heart of this ecosystem is the seafood industry, an industry where freshness defines price, quality, and trust. In markets like Tokyo and Lyon, a single piece of sea urchin delivered at perfect temperature can fetch over €300. But it must arrive in its exact molecular state as when it was pulled from the sea. That's why the companies running these operations invest in redundancy at every level. Dual power systems, triple-sealed containment, and secondary routes pre-approved across multiple countries in case of weather or political disruption. While much of the seafood's journey happens inside high-tech trucks and automated depots, human oversight remains a final, crucial component. At every checkpoint, certified cryologistics inspectors take thermal readings, inspect seal integrity, and review telemetry logs for inconsistencies. These professionals undergo rigorous training and carry thermal passports, a device that tracks their access, exposure times, and certification levels for each shipment they touch. If a handler isn't cleared for ultra-frozen protocols, they're not allowed within meters of the product. And all of this, the catching, freezing, packing, transporting, monitoring, is done in motion, across thousands of kilometers, through snowstorms in Germany, heat waves in Spain, and customs checks in every jurisdiction. Yet, somehow, the system works. The core remains at -70°C. The seafood arrives intact. And the customers, whether Michelin-star chefs or molecular gastronomy labs, receive their product as if the ocean itself had delivered it by hand. From Hamburg, the route diverges into a network that spans more than a dozen countries. Each destination demands absolute precision, not only in timing but also in how each type of seafood is handled. Sea scallops destined for high-end restaurants in Vienna must be separated from tuna loins scheduled for auction in Madrid. Razor clams meant for a boutique market in Prague can't share space with mackerel that will end up flash-grilled in a Brussels tapas bar. The contents are sorted with algorithmic intelligence, pairing thermal resistance with journey length, product fragility with route turbulence, and buyer requirements with border protocols. Each crate, though similar on the outside, is packed based on a unique cold decay profile. How long it will maintain the -70°C core depending on material thickness, product density, and external exposure. This allows logistics operators to map cargo distribution not just by geography, but by time to failure windows as short as 45 minutes. At the Berlin Control Tower, a team of cold chain analysts oversees the entire operation through a sprawling array of screens. Every crate is tracked not just by GPS, but by internal temperature graphs, vibration sensors, humidity detectors, and pressure monitors. A spike in vibration could mean a road bump that's compromising fragile products like soft-shell crab. A slight dip in nitrogen pressure could indicate a slow leak in the containment system. The software flags anomalies in real time, and human analysts are authorized to reroute, halt, or replace cargo immediately. Backup trucks idle strategically along the route network, pre-cooled and pre-cleared by customs to respond within an hour to any logistical emergency. In one case, a trailer carrying $1.6 million in frozen Japanese amberjack was intercepted at a rest stop in Belgium due to a half-degree fluctuation, and its cargo was redistributed within 42 minutes across 3 other trucks already in motion. It's this infrastructure, designed to respond, not just operate, that has enabled Europe to become one of the largest frozen seafood markets on the planet. And it's also what allows producers in Norway, Iceland, and beyond to maintain contracts with the most demanding buyers on Earth. The Parisian chefs who cut into a block of toro expect it to smell like the sea breeze of a Nordic fjord. A molecular biologist in Zurich injecting sea urchin protein into a test vial can't afford a temperature deviation of even 1 degree. That's why the system isn't only fast, it's layered. From external sensors mounted on the truck body, to internal nitrogen flow regulators inside each crate, and satellite diagnostics that constantly compare actual temperature to predictive decay models, the system operates more like a surgical suite than a freight network. In Lyon, where some of the world's most selective seafood distributors operate, deliveries arrive at 2 a.m. sharp. Not 1:55. Not 2:05. Timing is coordinated with the opening of the underground cold chambers where receiving temperatures must match the cargo's thermal envelope to avoid microshocks. These shocks, caused by sudden exposure to ambient air, even at a chilly -20 degrees Celsius, can create fissures in the seafood's cell structure, leading to drip loss and quality degradation. That's why receiving bays are pre-cooled with nitrogen mists, and crates are only opened after a full scan by IR thermography. Even the blades used to cut the seals are made of sterilized steel chilled to -50 degrees Celsius to avoid warming the crate upon contact. Across the continent, the human touch becomes visible again at the very end of the line. In restaurants from Rome to Rotterdam, chefs handle the seafood with a reverence usually reserved for ancient wines or rare truffles. They let it rest in negative pressure thawing chambers, where temperature rises no faster than 1 degree Celsius per hour to maintain cellular cohesion. Some establishments go as far as to include a thermal authenticity certificate alongside the dish, showing that the tuna, scallops, or shrimp were preserved at -70 degrees Celsius every second of their journey. Diners, unaware of the orchestration behind it all, taste only the purity, the texture of fish that flakes like it's still breathing, the sweetness of scallops that taste like sunlight never touched them, the clean salt burst of roe that never thawed until it met their tongue. What makes all of this possible isn't just technology, it's an obsession with the invisible. An understanding that freshness isn't just about time, but about temperature held in absolute discipline. It's about preparing for 1,000 possible failures and building an ecosystem where none of them are allowed to happen. In this world, delay is decay, and the only acceptable arrival is a perfect one. So the trucks keep moving, the nitrogen keeps flowing, and somewhere deep in the night, a shipment enters another city, untouched, unchanged, unreal in its perfection. As the cold chain snakes further south across Europe, the challenge shifts from maintaining temperature to confronting climate. Crossing into warmer territories like Italy, Spain, and parts of southern France introduces new variables: ambient heat, dense traffic, longer daylight hours, that can compromise the thermal stability of even the most advanced cryosystems. To account for this, the logistics network implements thermal shadowing, a strategy where transport routes are calculated not just for speed, but for how long a trailer is exposed to direct sunlight during transit. Routes are adjusted by time of day, elevation, and road composition. Asphalt heats faster than concrete. Urban stop-and-go adds more risk than rural highways. A road cutting through a vineyard valley in Portugal at 3 p.m. can cause external container temperatures to spike by over 40 degrees Celsius, even if the internal remains frozen. So the trucks drive at night, park underground at noon, and rely on predictive AI to stay one step ahead of the sun. The trailers themselves are more than just containers. They're mobile cryogenic environments engineered to behave like sealed ecosystems. Each one contains a pressure-stabilized core lined with reflective barriers that bounce back ambient heat, while a matrix of nitrogen injectors pulse microbursts of cold vapor into the chambers every few seconds. Internal fans are sealed inside magnetic bearings to avoid mechanical heat generation, and power systems are supported by dual lithium titanate battery arrays with a failover link to diesel cryocompressors. If a truck enters a tunnel, the system accounts for the temperature drop. If it hits a traffic jam in Valencia, it switches to high-frequency injection mode to compensate. And if anything malfunctions, that data is already being analyzed by engineers in Zurich before the driver even knows there's an issue. But even with all these layers of control, the final stretch remains the most fragile. Deliveries into dense metro areas, Rome, Marseille, Madrid, require extreme precision. City infrastructure wasn't built for cryogenic trailers the size of city buses. Streets are narrow. Parking windows are tight. Noise regulations prohibit late-night unloading in residential districts. And one wrong turn can cost minutes. Minutes that mean thermal compromise. That's why, in some cities, the final leg is handled by a new class of vehicle, the cryovan. These smaller, highly insulated electric vehicles are preloaded at regional hubs and timed to arrive at restaurants, markets, and labs within a 10-minute delivery window. Their capacity is low, but their speed and maneuverability are unmatched. In one corner of Madrid, a fleet of these cryovans distributes ultra-frozen seafood to over 80 establishments every morning before sunrise. The operation is silent, surgical, and nearly invisible to the average passerby. Meanwhile, back at the source, another shipment is already in motion. Fishing vessels off the coast of Tromsø are hauling in the next round of deep-sea catch, Arctic cod, Greenland halibut, and Norwegian langoustines. The catch is frozen on board using blast chillers that drop temperatures to -40°C within 30 minutes. Once docked, the seafood enters the inland staging facility, where it will be deep frozen to -70°C before repeating the entire journey again. It's a loop with no breaks. A supply chain that breathes with the tides and beats to the rhythm of cargo sensors, injector valves, and thermal protocols. And it's not just the seafood that evolves. The entire system is in constant adaptation. Engineers are developing graphene-coated crates that lose even less thermal energy. Cryomapping software is using quantum algorithms to predict road friction and its impact on temperature insulation. There are even experimental drone relays being tested in Switzerland that could one day handle emergency payload swaps mid-route without opening the crate or exposing it to outside air. The innovation is relentless, driven by a single goal: never let the temperature rise. Inside the labs that buy this seafood for research, the standards are even more exacting. A single tuna sample used for protein sequencing must retain its cellular structure down to the mitochondrial level. A scallop used in neurochemical testing must not be exposed to UV radiation or even brief oxygen contact. That's why every part of the cold chain is designed with traceability in mind. From crate origin to delivery timestamp, every action is recorded. A crate that arrives in Barcelona contains a complete datasheet: who loaded it, when it left the freezer, what route it took, how often nitrogen was injected, and when it was last scanned. If any value is off by even 0.2%, the shipment is rejected. In this world, perfection isn't a bonus, it's the baseline. And so, the trucks roll on. Beneath cities and across mountains. Through silent border crossings in the Alps and into hidden service docks beneath Michelin-star kitchens. They move like arteries in a frozen bloodstream, carrying more than seafood. They carry trust, consistency, a promise that the ocean's purity can be captured, frozen, and delivered, untouched by time, untouched by failure. Despite the complexity and fragility of the process, this ultra-frozen distribution network continues to expand. With every successful delivery, new demands rise. Pharmaceutical companies are now adopting the same -70°C cold chain principles to transport delicate enzymes and DNA strands. Universities request frozen specimens for marine biology research, demanding the same thermal guarantees once reserved only for 5-star chefs. Even luxury supermarkets are joining in, offering -70°C sashimi-grade fish directly to elite clientele. Customers who expect the same pristine quality they'd find in Tokyo's Tsukiji market. This convergence of science, gastronomy, and commerce has turned what was once a niche logistical feat into a blueprint for the future of perishable transport. At the center of this revolution stands the European cryo-distribution system, one of the most advanced, disciplined, and unforgiving cold logistics frameworks in the world. But perfection doesn't happen by accident. Behind every delivery, there are layers of silent labor: the fisherman battling waves in sub-zero winds, the technician tuning liquid nitrogen flow with decimal precision, the data analyst watching for the slightest thermal flicker at 3 a.m., and the driver navigating empty streets in the early hours while hauling millions in silent, frozen cargo. There is no applause when the tuna arrives intact or the scallops retain their sheen, but there is respect. In a world driven by speed and compromise, this network exists as a defiance of both. It proves that quality doesn't need shortcuts, only obsession. That preservation isn't just about cold, it's about control. And that somewhere along this frozen road, between Norway's silent fjords and the glowing kitchens of Milan, lies a story of mastery that most will never see. What they will see, however, is the result. The glistening plate. The clean slice. The delicate aroma that tells the chef everything he needs to know before his knife even touches the fish. They will taste the legacy of a chain that refused to fail. They'll post the picture, whisper about the freshness, and ask how something caught in the Arctic could taste like it was never frozen. And the answer will be simple. It wasn't just transported. It was preserved, protected, and delivered through the most unforgiving standard in cold chain history. Every week, over 100 tons of seafood travel across Europe under these extreme conditions. It is a hidden ballet of liquid nitrogen, cryogenic sensors, and perfectly timed relays. It is the reason your toro melts without a trace of fiber. Why a sea urchin spoonful can bring silence to a table. Why some of the world's top restaurants, labs, and collectors are willing to pay 10 times more, not for the fish, but for the precision. And as the demand grows, so does the network. New hubs are being built in Warsaw, Lisbon, and Copenhagen. Cryologistics companies are expanding their fleets with smart, autonomous trailers. New AI models are being deployed to calculate traffic exposure, optimize delivery time slots, and predict microfailures before they even happen. The entire system continues to evolve, because the ocean never waits, and neither does excellence. If you've made it this far into the story, you've already joined a rare group of people who understand what goes into every perfect bite of ultra-frozen seafood. But there's more. Much more. Because what happens behind these silent refrigerated doors tells a story of innovation, discipline, and risk that goes far beyond the kitchen. And if you're fascinated by the cold precision that powers a billion-dollar industry most people never think about, you're in the right place. So make sure to subscribe to the channel, not just to support the work behind this storytelling, but to stay connected with the most incredible operations in the global food logistics world. From Arctic fishing to deep frozen deliveries, from the sea to the scientist's lab bench, this is where impossible transport becomes reality. And every new video pulls back the curtain just a little more. Hit that subscribe button, stay curious, and we'll see you in the next story, where cold isn't just a number, it's the law.